Welcome back to another episode of Local Search Tuesdays. This week, I'm sharing my slides from Digital Dealer in Las Vegas. You don't want to miss this. I'm sharing mind-blowing new data from a massive 2-year research project on dealership Google Business Profiles. I've been speaking at every digital dealer for over a decade, and this time I took a different approach. Instead of standing on the stage and talking about best practices, I shared the results of a huge 2-year research project we've done on dealership Google Business Profiles. Instead of sharing best practices, I'm sharing real-world data on what's working and what's not working for dealerships. I had 90 minutes in Vegas, but I'm going to go as fast as I can through it today to be respectful of your time. It's likely to be just shy of an hour long, so kick back and get ready for some incredibly insightful info.
This is advanced level tips to make you an SEO superhero. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SearchLab, but you probably already know that because you've been watching these videos for a while now. But hey, just in case it's your first time ever seeing an episode, this is my series, Local Search Tuesdays. You can see it every Tuesday on our blog at the link right there or on our socials. And here's a goofy picture of me speaking at a conference in Seattle a few years back. I'm lucky enough to get to speak at conferences all over the world. And that's great, except sometimes you see some speakers that aren't as engaging on stage. Typically, it's going to be somebody that's more of a salesperson and they're up there just trying to pitch their product. And even worse, a lot of the times, they don't put much effort into the design of their slides. So typically, it's just a plain white background with no graphics, no images, no colors. And they pack every slide with bullet points in black Arial font. And that's not very fun to watch. And it's been scientifically proven the bullet points kill kittens. So today we're going to keep all the kittens safe and avoid the bullet points. And you saw the superhero reference there at the beginning. I'm an absolute movie nut. I've got 23 different movies tattooed on my bodies. Both arms and my right leg are completely sleeved up. So every time I do a presentation, I love to share my love of movies along with my love of digital marketing. So there's always a theme, and I include at least one movie for every year in the last 50 years. And today we're doing superhero movies. So we've got 129 references to superhero movies, including all of the MCU in timeline order. All you Marvel nerds are going to love that one. Now, I know there is some obscure stuff, especially from the 70s and 80s, that most of you won't have seen. So there is attribution over to the side. Let's get this going because we want to get this done as quickly as possible to be respectful of your time. Why the long face? Are you spending too much time looking up at the competition, ranking higher in search results? You don't have to have a huge brain to succeed in SEO, even though sometimes it seems like it's a lot of magic and voodoo. It's really not. I've got hot tips to share with you today so that you'll be able to crush the competition and kick ass in search results. Now, I've been talking about local SEO at Digital Dealer every year, twice a year, for over a decade. And Google releases thousands of updates every year, but the basics have stayed the same. The stuff I'm going to talk about today, I talked about more than 10 years ago. But if I've been talking about it and sharing the secrets to success for over a decade, why is it that most dealers and most automotive SEO vendors still really suck at SEO? It doesn't make sense. Plus, in today's world, SEO isn't just optimizing for Google, it's optimizing for people. Because we know that people are going to shop around. Nobody goes to Google and does a search and finds a dealership and buys from that first dealership. They're going to do research. So you need to be sure that you stand out and that you're better than the competition from a user standpoint, not just from showing up number 1 or number 2. Because it doesn't matter where you rank, people are going to be doing research and seeing the competition anyway. Most dealerships aren't really set up to handle SEO in-house. They typically try to pawn it off on an internet manager or some sales manager, and it really needs to be a full-time role. And most of the automotive SEO vendors don't do it correctly because it's just too much effort, and they want to sell it for really cheap, and that means they can't spend the time to do it correctly. Another big problem is they all do cookie-cutter SEO. It's the same SEO, same strategy, same tactics for every dealer, regardless of the dealer's brand or where the dealer's located. And that just doesn't work in today's world. You've got to customize what you're doing so that you show up for the customers that you need to show up for. And that means you need to be doing local SEO. Most of the vendors out there are doing traditional SEO, and local SEO is completely different. And we know that you need to be doing local SEO as a car dealer because all searches are automatically localized. In this search, I just searched Ford dealer, and it shows me dealerships near my location. Even though I didn't specify, I didn't say city, I didn't say near me or nearby, it just gave me Ford dealers near to my location. That shows that Google knows that that is a query with local intent, whether you explicitly state it or not. So you should be paying attention to an annual study called the Local Search Ranking Factor Study, where they basically take all of the experts in local SEO, the top minds, the people that are doing research and getting great results for their clients. Usually it's about 40 people, and they send out a very extensive survey on positive factors, negative factors, foundational factors, because nobody really knows what goes into the algorithm. But if you ask all of these experts, they're going to have a pretty good idea of what works because they've done the research and they're doing this work for their clients. And then you can aggregate all of these answers and get a really good handle on what moves the needle when it comes to Google's local algorithm. So you get two pie charts, one that shows you the factors that influence your visibility in the map pack or in Google Maps, and another that shows you the factors that influence your visibility below the map pack in the regular standard organic blue links, although they're not regular, they're localized still. It's really your Bible. It's your guide to which signals you need to pay attention to and optimize if you want to show up better in local searches. And I like to boil things down to simple concepts so it's easier to remember moving forward and easier to make your case to your boss if you need to shift your strategy. And the most important thing that you can remember is that all Google is at the simplest level is a pattern detection program. So when you're doing SEO, you're giving your dealership a more attractive pattern. Now, I've been talking at digital dealer and automotive conferences for over a decade, but today I'm going to share different information. Instead of just talking about best practices and hoping that you trust that I know what I'm talking about, I'm going to share data from a big research project that we've recently completed. Because if you see real world information about what dealers are doing that's working and what dealers aren't doing that they should be doing, this will help you get better at understanding SEO and either doing it yourself or working with a vendor that's truly going to help your dealership. I'm also going to scatter in some tips. So it's not just, hey, here's data, but here's some data and here's an explanation of what's going on with this and why this works the way that it works. So we have just finished this massive 2-year-long research project into Google Business Profiles. We pulled over 2 million data points on over 8,500 Google Business Profiles across 3 different verticals. And these are the 3 verticals that we work with the most: car dealerships, personal injury attorneys, and cannabis dispensaries. So for the car dealers, we pulled 2,734 Google Business Profiles by running these keywords: Ford dealer, Chevy dealer, Toyota dealer, Jeep dealer, Kia dealer, and used car dealer in these 14 cities, and then looking at all of the businesses that ranked in those search results. Now, we did have a lot of service department and parts department business profiles that showed up. So once we removed those, because we only wanted to look at the primary listing for the dealership, we ended up with 2,125 dealerships. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 different things for the rest of the presentation. There are factors that influence ranking. So if you optimize these factors, you'll show up more often and better. And there are also factors I'm going to discuss which don't affect your visibility, but they affect how well you're going to convert when you do show up. So ranking factors and conversion factors. Let's start with the ranking factors. I searched multiple categories related to the brand of the dealership. That should always be the primary category, but you'd be shocked to see this. There were actually 32 different primary categories selected. And the second most common category we saw selected was car dealer, which is the most generic category that you could choose for your primary category. And the reason that it's important not to choose something generic is that your primary category carries more weight in Google's local algorithm. So you really want to be strategic. And you should watch this video from my series. It talks about how sometimes it's not exactly what you think it would be. And there are 10 category slots available, and there are more than 10 categories in the system. that apply to new car sales. So a dealership would be using all 10 category slots, but almost 24% of the dealerships, almost 1 out of 4, only had a single category selected and left the other 9 empty. And only half of the dealerships had more than 5. And only 15% had all 10 selected. You should always have at least 9, but realistically, you should have 10 in your primary listing for the sales side of the business. Watch this video. It actually walks you through all the categories you should have on your primary listing, and it also explains the categories you should use for your service profile and for your parts profile, because you should have separate Google Business profiles set up, but only 61% of the dealerships did that. Now, this is a rule that Google specifically changed just for car dealers. Other businesses aren't allowed to set up these separate department listings, but dealerships are. If Google's going to change the rules for a particular business vertical, there's a reason for that, and you should take advantage of the fact that Google is letting you do things that other businesses are not allowed to do. So make sure you set up your department listings the way that you should, and that means you're allowed to do a separate listing for service, a separate listing for parts, and a separate listing for your collision department. But you're not allowed to set up a separate used car department or a separate finance department or even one for car buying. Now, a lot of dealers try to do this, but it's not allowed, and you don't want to get suspended for doing something against the rules. As you set these departments up, make sure that the categories are unique for each department. If you start mixing categories and showing sales categories under service and service categories under sales, that causes confusion and you're not going to show up as well as you could. And a couple of years ago, Google released cars for sale. Now they've changed the name of it to vehicles for sale because it's now been rolled out to RVs and power sports. But it's that live inventory list that shows in your Google Business profile. And almost 20% of dealers still don't have that implemented, which is pretty shocking. Again, this is something specifically set up for car dealers. Why would you not do this? Reviews are also a pretty big factor in the algorithm. And we saw an average review count per dealership of 1,500 reviews. Now, I'm not telling you need that many because Google's algorithm actually doesn't care how many reviews you have. All the algorithm cares about is that you have more reviews than the local competition. But you don't want to get too many more, because if you really outpace the competition, like you've got 6,000 reviews and the next closest dealer in town has 1,000, it looks fake. Human nature causes people to think that you're faking those reviews, and you don't want to do that. And as far as the rating goes, we saw an average of only 4.1, and I know a lot of dealers want to have a perfect 5.0, but a lot of research has been done that shows that the ideal range is actually 4.4 to 4.7, because everybody knows no business is perfect, and there's grumpy people that are going to leave bad reviews. So don't be too shocked if you're not perfect, but don't really have to strive for perfection. You do want to have a little bit better than a 4.1, though. There are some dealers out there with some pretty bad reviews dragging this average down. And we saw an average acquisition pace of only about 23 new reviews per month. It's really important that you're proactive with your reputation management process, because it's not really human nature to leave a review if you're happy. So you want to make sure you're asking every customer, because the upset customers will obviously leave you a review, but the happy customers won't unless you ask. And you want to make it easy. Don't expect that people understand where to go to leave these reviews. So watch this video. It walks you through a really solid proactive process. And now some new research that's really cool. When you go to your business profile or to anyone's business profile, you see a default sort of the top 10 reviews that Google chooses. And then you can go click a filter and say, I want to see the most recent reviews or the best reviews or the worst reviews. But before you sort them, you see that default sort of the top 10. If a customer review includes a photo, it stays in that default sort for a longer period of time. And if the review includes more text, it stays in the default sort for a longer period of time. And reviews can get thumbs up. And if a review has 2 or more upvotes or thumbs up, it stays in the default sort for longer. So we can combine all of these together for a really cool little trick that will help you bury bad reviews. So if you have a bad review that shows in that default sort, you can get it buried literally in less than a day. All you have to do is reach out to some customers that recently left 5-star reviews, ask them to add a little bit more context so that there's more text in the review, more of a story, and then ask them to upload a photo along with that updated review. And then once they've done that, have a couple people at the dealership go give a thumbs up to that new updated review, and it will jump right to the top of the list. So you do that with 3 or 4 reviews, and you can bury that bad review. So that's no longer a bad first impression when people look at your dealership on the Google Business Profile. We can also look at some other factors like site speed. We're looking at the landing page here, which is almost always going to be the home page. Now, obviously, sometimes you may have a group site where the Google Business Profile would link to an individual dealership page within the group site. But for all intents and purposes, we're looking at the home page of all these dealership websites, and the average landing page load time is only 4 seconds. Now, a lot of times, the load speed is something you don't really have much influence over. It's going to be based on whichever website platform you're on and whichever plugins you're using from your third-party vendors. Also, don't believe the hype. As long as your site loads in less than 10 seconds, shaving off more time is not going to have any effect on the SEO side of things. It's also important to have the correct auto dealer schema on the page that your Google Business Profile links to, which again is almost always the home page, and only about half of the dealerships had that. And that's a problem. And then obviously, I'm going to talk in a minute about specific tips on optimizing individual pages. But one of the things I'm going to talk about is if you want to show up for a keyword phrase, then you need a page of content about that keyword phrase. And you need to use that keyword phrase when you are optimizing those page elements. But only 15% of these home pages had the keyword phrase on the landing page. So literally, we're searching for Ford dealer, and we don't have Ford dealer anywhere on the home page of a Ford dealer website. That's pretty problematic. And like I said, another really important concept to remember, if you want to show up as a search result when somebody is typing a particular phrase into the search engines, then you need a page of content about that singular concept on your site. And it doesn't have to be the best page on the internet. It just needs to be the best answer in the local area to the question that potential customer is asking. And if you're writing the best answer, you're probably going to need to answer some of the subsequent questions that potential customer would have once they got their initial answer. And you need to be sure that your content makes it obvious to everyone why you're so amazing and why people should buy from you and not from the competition. Because if you have the same generic BS content on your site as all of the other dealerships in town, why would anyone care? Why would anyone come back and buy from you? So write this amazing content for people and then optimize it for the search engine. And like I said just a minute ago, I'm going to walk you through how to optimize a page on your website. So you can either do it yourself, or if you've got an in-house team handling your SEO or a vendor handling your SEO, you can use this new knowledge to go check what's going on your site and see if they're following best practice and optimizing your site the right way. As I walk through these page elements, keep in mind, every time I say keyword, it's the same keyword. You shouldn't switch the keyword between different elements on the same page. And also city, it's one city and it's the same city throughout the page. Mentioning multiple cities in a title tag, that's not really going to help you show up in multiple cities, so don't do it. So, most importantly, the title tag is the absolute most weighted element on the page. It's what shows in the little tab above where you type in the URL. You shouldn't ever put your dealership name first. You're the only business named that, and you will always rank number 1 when someone searches for that phrase. Plus, now in search results, Google shows the name of the business above the link and your little favicon, so it shows the business logo. So you don't even need it there for branding, but you definitely don't want it at the beginning of the title tag. You need your most important keyword phrase and your city in that title tag. You also need it in your H1 heading. You should only have one H1 heading on the page, but actually check and make sure that you do have one, because several website providers in automotive don't put H1 headings on pages, and it's the second most important element. It's the big thick headline above the text area on your page, unless you're on an Ansira site where they do some really wonky stuff that's a little bit shady, where they put it in all caps and make it super small text and put it at the very bottom of the page. That's actually really bad for your SEO, so you might want to avoid Ansira sites because of that. But the H1 heading should be a little bit more conversational, but include that same keyword and city phrase. And then obviously it should be in the page content, but if you've written the best answer in the local area that answers subsequent questions, it's all about your business and why you're awesome, you're probably not going to have to optimize too much here. You should also have the keyword phrase and the city in your URL. Always separate words in the URL by dashes because that's what Google sees as a space. Now, I'm not telling you to go change URLs for pages that already exist. Once a page has been seen and indexed by Google, changing the URL is not going to matter, and in fact could cause you some problems, so don't do that. But as new content is created, moving forward, you should always include those phrases in the URL. You should also include those phrases in the alt text. Now, years ago, Google couldn't tell what was in an image, but Google can definitely tell now. It's got machine learning programs that can really accurately tell Google what's in an image, but alt text is still part of the algorithm. It's a descriptive phrase in the image embed code. And a lot of people don't do anything with it, so it's a great way to get a little bit of an edge on the competition. Now, I'm not talking about just putting the keyword in the city. Obviously, you need to describe the image as well, but include those keyword phrases and city phrases. Also, it's an ADA compliance issue. If you have an embedded image on your site that doesn't have alt text, you can actually get sued by a visually impaired person for not having an accessible website. So you want to make sure you handle all of the alt text just to avoid lawsuits, which, side note, becomes a problem if you're on a dealer.com site because their sites literally don't allow you to put alt text on the embedded images. So you're risking a big lawsuit there. You also need your keyword and city phrase in the meta description, which is behind the scenes code, but also not included in the algorithm. It doesn't influence how you rank, but it's a conversion factor because the meta description is what populates those couple of gray sentences that show up underneath your blue link when you show as a search result in Google. So you need to approach it like you're writing an ad and write something compelling, and it's important to have that keyword phrase and city in there because if someone uses that keyword phrase and city in their search query, they'll be bolded in the meta description, and a lot of studies have shown that increases the click-throughs to your site regardless of where you're ranking on the page. We also looked at how many words were on the page. Again, we've got to write the best answer in the local area that answers all the subsequent questions. It's all about the business and all about why the dealership is awesome. You can't do that in 300 or 400 words. Now, I'm not saying there's a magic number, but the average we saw was 832 words. Now, this is, again, GBP landing page, so almost always the homepage of a website. Again, that's not a magic word count number. You don't need to try to target that, but it's definitely hard to write the best answer in a few hundred words. So keep that in mind. And you've got to have a blog, and you should be posting regularly because there's a huge difference between the kind of content that goes on the main section of your site and the kind of content that goes on your blog. The main website content is the bottom of that buying funnel. It's meant to show up and drive conversions. Blog content is more mid to upper funnel content. It's more about information and discovery. You shouldn't expect to get leads from your blog posts. Those are there for earlier in that buyer journey when people are just doing research and trying to figure out what they want to buy and where they want to buy from. So that's why you need a blog. And in fact, you can use your blog even more efficiently if you periodically write informational posts about the local area that don't have really anything to do with your dealership, where you say something like, hey, our sales team loves to go out and grab burgers every Friday. These are the 5 best burger restaurants in Dallas. These are posts that we kind of equate to billboards. You don't put a billboard up because you expect that everyone that sees the billboard is going to call you. You put it up for brand awareness and brand building. That's how these posts work as well, because it gets eyeballs on your website before people are looking to buy what you're selling. So it's a really great strategy. If you're not quite sure how to do that, though, I've got a really cool video here that walks you through 10 different ideas and concepts that you can use as a springboard to write your own awesome local informational blog posts. Inbound links are also important. Having other websites linked to your website is a really weighted element. And the average number of links for a dealership website was 18,754. But that's 18,754 links from an average of only 208 unique websites. There is a lot of diminishing return in getting more than one link from the same website. So once you get a link from a website, it's not as valuable getting more. So if you have 100 links from only one site, that's nowhere near as valuable as having 20 links from 20 different websites. So when you're evaluating the inbound links or the backlinks, if you're working with a vendor that uses that outdated term, pay attention to the number of unique websites, the number of unique linking domains that are sending links your way, not the total number of links. And because we're talking about targeting the local algorithm, you really need to acquire local links from businesses and websites in the same local area as your dealership. And the good news is it's really easy to get those links if you're involved in the community. And guess what? Dealerships are very philanthropic and community focused, so it's pretty easy to get awesome links. But if you're still not sure how to do this, I have a really awesome video, again, that walks you through a bunch of different concepts. And usually, when I talk about link building in a presentation, I'd run you through these ideas, but I'm trying to do different stuff and squeeze in more beneficial information today. So if you do need some ideas for tactics for building links, go watch this video. It will walk you through all of your options. The important thing, like I said, is the number of unique websites, not the total number of links. And I had to point this out because it was crazy. I don't know what AutoNation's SEO team is doing, but they have a ridiculous gap in the number of links versus the number of unique websites. In fact, the gap was 3.7 million because one of the sites had 3,776,260 individual links, but that was only from 631 sites. So their team or their vendor, if they're using a vendor, is saying, look at all these links. You've got all these links. This is amazing. But it's not really that many links. It's only 631 sites, which is kind of just passable, honestly. So that's it for the ranking factors. Let's talk about conversion factors. One of the things that I've talked about for years and other people like George Nenny have talked about for years is adding UTM tracking to the link on your Google Business Profile that points to your website, because attribution is broken in Google Analytics and you want to make sure that those clicks are correctly attributed as organic. Only about half of the dealerships are doing this, even though multiple people have been out there talking about this for years. So if you don't have UTM tracking or you don't have it set up correctly, watch this video and go change that, because you want the right data in Google Analytics so you can make better decisions. And don't forget to include UTM tracking on your appointments link or your products link if you have one, or even in the links in your Google posts, because you need better data to make better decisions. And there's a questions and answers widget that's been around for probably 6 or 7 years at this point, and we saw an average of 9 questions asked to each dealership in this study. This widget allows any person to ask you a question, and any random person can answer that question for you, and that should terrify you. The big problem here is that potential customers or customers think that it's chat. They think there's somebody on the other end waiting to answer their question, but it's actually a community discussion widget. But you have the ability to load your own questions, and a lot of dealerships don't realize this, and for some reason other vendors don't do it, but you can set up what we call a pre-site FAQ page, because no one is going to go to an FAQ page on your site, read through the 50 or 60 questions to see if maybe a similar question is there that maybe has an answer that helps them. People need instant answers, so they will go click ask a question because they think it's chat and they think they can get this amazing answer. So if you preload your own questions and answer all your questions, there's something really cool about the way that this Q&A widget works. If someone is typing a question in and a similar question has been asked and answered in the past, Google will display an answer to the question as they're typing it. So it's actually faster than the experience would be if they were doing it with a chat widget. So you've got to do this. It's an amazing pre-site experience that really helps get you more conversions from potential customers. And in that questions and answers section, you can upvote answers, because you can have multiple answers to questions, and whichever answer has the most upvotes is the one that's displayed as the primary answer. And only about 20% of the questions, only about 1 out of 5, had a primary answer from the actual business. And that's a problem. It shows that most dealerships and most dealerships SEO vendors are not paying attention to the questions and answers section in the Google Business Profile section, which has been there for 6 or 7 years. So how do you guys not know it's there? Come on, let's get this going. Like I said, questions can receive multiple answers, so the answer that has the most thumbs up is the one that's displayed as the primary answer. Pay attention, make sure your dealership answers are the ones that are upvoted. And Google posts are awesome. They're free ads that show in your profile. They're really prominent on mobile as well. We saw an average of 2.5 posts a month per dealership. I did a Whiteboard Friday episode for Moz, which is a really big SEO toolset company, and they have a very famous series called Whiteboard Fridays. This episode that I did is all about how to be successful with Google Posts. It's densely packed with information. It's about 13 minutes long. Go watch this if you're doing your own posts. It will help you create much better posts that will be much more effective for you. The biggest problem, though, they're free ads, and most dealerships and most vendors don't treat them like ads. They treat them like social media. And this is not social media or anything close to social media. It should always be treated with the insight that you are providing something promotional, something compelling to people that haven't been to your website yet. So don't share customer delivery photos. And you shouldn't even create a post that links to one particular vehicle, because posts are going to show up for 6 months. You don't want to create a post that talks about one specific vehicle that's probably going to be sold next week, and you still have that out there for the world to see on your Google Business Profile. The actual key to success isn't what's in the post, though. It's the thumbnail. Google will crop your image to a smaller version of the image and just show a few lines of text and not all of the text that you've entered. So if that post thumbnail isn't compelling, nobody's going to click on it. The problem is image cropping is really wonky, and you can load the same image in multiple times and it will crop slightly differently. Or maybe you're loading in an image that says truck month and has a really pretty picture of a truck on it, and half the truck gets cropped out, or half of the text gets cropped out and you can't read it. It's not going to be compelling if it's not an awesome image. So for better control over those thumbnail crops, I've created a Photoshop template that you can use. You can download it at the link right there. And it looks like this. Anything that shows in that white grid is considered safe and will show in the thumbnail, and the rest of the image appears when they click and see the full post. So you can do some really cool stuff with a call to action or a phone number down there in that bottom bit that says not visible in thumbnail. So that's it for all of the research on the Google Business Profiles. We also have some other data that's really compelling. It's a scoring matrix that I created several years back for using at 20 group meetings to help those dealers have a better understanding of what's going on with their status of SEO and optimization. And we've also used it whenever we have a dealership that's interested in working with us. We'll do their score. Or if I'm at a conference and dealerships would like to see how they compare, we'll score those as well. So I collected and analyzed all the scores that I've done since the beginning of 2022, and that was 920 dealerships. And this matrix is basically a micro audit. It's a small audit that scores the 4 areas that influence organic visibility. And then those scores are all weighted to approximate the importance of each section to Google's algorithm. So the first area that's scored is the content on your site and how it's optimized. That's got a maximum point value of 44 points. Then we look at your inbound links with a maximum point value of 10 points. Then we look at your Google Business Profile with a maximum point value of 32 points. And then we look at your reviews on Google and Yelp, and that's got a maximum point value of 14 points. So that all adds up to a maximum total point value of 100 points, although that's pretty much impossible to achieve. It's important to point out that the matrix scores on tactics, not on strategy. And people tend to use those terms interchangeably, but there's an important difference. Strategy is where you're going, which direction you're headed, and tactics are which steps you take to get there. The reason that we evaluate basic tactics is to make the matrix a more helpful analysis, because typically I'm using this at 20 groups where I'm not there speaking to get leads, I'm there speaking to help. And if it was too much on the strategy side, those dealers could take it back to their in-house team or to their current SEO vendor and say, look how horribly I scored. And it'd be very easy to refute those scores and say, well, that's SearchLab's way of looking at things, and they don't know your store. They don't know the competition. They don't know your local area. Our strategy is better. You can ignore what they have to say. But when it's basic tactics that anyone that knows SEO would agree, this is how things should be done, that really can't be argued. And regardless of your strategy, if you don't have basic tactics handled, it really doesn't matter. The strategy is not going to do anything if you don't have the right tactics in place. So the average scores pretty low. For the 920 dealerships, we saw an average score of only 14.9. The highest score we've ever seen was a Volkswagen dealer with a score of an 81.59. The lowest score we've ever seen was a Toyota dealership that we recently scored that had a negative 71.5, because there are some things in the matrix that will deduct points if it's a factor that is so incorrect it's either likely or definitely hurting your visibility in search engines. But the overall score, like I said, was 14.9. If we go like high school math and do it as a percentage, that's 14.9% of the possible score. So we're definitely failing really badly. If we look at the individual sections and look at the percentages, we get another compelling story. The average score for on-site is only 1.2 out of a possible 44 points. That's a 2.7% score. The average score for links is 1.3 out of 10. That's easy math, 13%. The average score for Google Business Profiles was 8 out of a 32. That's a 25% score. Still not great, but better. And the average review score was 4.4 out of 14. That's a 31% score. It's better, but really, most dealers don't include reputation management as part of their SEO strategy. Even though they should, they don't, because they're doing regular SEO, not local SEO. So if we look at these percentages together, it really shows how people are missing the boat when it comes to basic SEO tactics. Reviews are at 31%, GBP 25, links at 13, but on site, this is 44 out of the possible 100 points, nearly half of the value of everything. Because if you don't have the right content on your site, doesn't matter what else you do, you're not going to show in search results. And that content has to be optimized the right way as well. Gosh, y'all, we're looking at a 2.7% score. It's the one that's by far the worst score, yet it's by far the most important piece of the SEO puzzle. So if you're watching this and you'd like to get your site scored, pull out your phone, point it at the screen, scan that QR code. That QR code will pull up a form where you can send us your site's information. If you have multiple stores in your group and you'd like us to score all of the sites, there is a field that says, additional URLs. Let us know what those are. You can send them all to us. We will score those and let you know what your scores look like. So you can evaluate your current vendor or your current team, or you could just see how you stack up against everyone else. The more data we can get, the more insight I can provide next year when I come back and do this talk again. So you need to customize your SEO strategy so that you can improve your patterns so you'll show up more often in searches. But remember, when you're doing this, that SEO is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to give SEO time to work. The things that you, with your in-house team or your vendor that you're working with, are doing today are influencing your visibility in search results 2 to 4 months down the road. So you should expect to start to see some traction at around 6 to 8 months, and you start seeing the bigger results at 12 to 14 months on average. So I know that was a whole lot, and I went through it really quickly. Looks like I'm at about 34 minutes of time here. This was a 90-minute presentation live. I went really quick and cut out some of the anecdotes, but hopefully it wasn't too painful sitting through that fire hose of information. And now when you're thinking about your dealership's visibility in searches, you won't be down and depressed because you got all of these hot tips from me. And no, that is not the same joke. This is Ghostwriter 2. Thank you very much. You'll no longer be the underdog in search results, and everyone at the dealership will be happy. That was advanced level tips to make you an SEO superhero. There's my email address. If you ever have questions about SEO, please send them to me. I am happy to help any dealership out there. I have an open email policy. I will always answer, even though it might be a little bit delayed if I'm traveling overseas. But let me know what your questions are, or if you'd like to get a copy of these slides, I'm happy to send you a copy of the slides. Or if the QR code isn't working for your phone, or you'd just rather email me and ask me to score you, you can email me as well. And if you'd like to get a copy of the slides as a special bonus, as always, at the end, there is a list of all of the movies in order of release dates. Thanks so much for watching.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to check the whole thing out. That's definitely all the time we've got left for this week's episode, so you know what that means. Put your hand on the screen right here. We totally just high-fived because you learned something awesome. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Local Search Tuesdays.